Hello guys, I'm going to tie another pattern for the channel. Classic pattern known as a Gold Ribbed Hares Ear. Very good general nymph pattern. Imitates pretty much every nymph that swims. So if you know nothing at all about entomology like myself, general patterns are very good. You can turn up to any trout fishery in the country and catch a fish on an hares ear nymph. So we'll give that a go for you for the video. The gold beaded version is very good as a point fly in a team of 3. Or this one will probably be fished as a dropper because it's not going to have any weight at all. You can add weight in the form of lead if you need to as well. Or you can tie it with copper wire, which is a good method as well. So what we're going to do, we're going to use a Camazan B830 in size 12. Now I quite like it. It's classed as a lure hook. When I put it in the vise, you'll see that this shank isn't quite as long as most lure hooks. I find it's the perfect length for a nymph. I'll show you a photo of a nymph that I found while cleaning a fish. It must have crawled out of it somehow, I don't know how. And there was a nice little nymph crawling around on my chopping board. So I took a photo of it. It was very dark in colour, so I've got something like this to represent it. I'll call it the goth pheasant tail, but it's not. It's just a pheasant tail tied in with a black pheasant, a melanistic pheasant, and that's the closest thing I can find to what it was crawling around on my board. God knows what it was. I'm sure somebody will tell me when I post it up later in the video. And I used dark hares ear for the thorax. So this nymph is very similar, except we're going to use rabbit fur instead of hair. I've got an almost unlimited supply of rabbit, living in Wales and owning a very good air gun. So there we are. Now what we do, instead of using these fibres here, we actually use the underfur, which is the perfect colour. Very similar to a light hares ear. You can use this to do any of the iron blue patterns as well. It's just about the right colour. So versatile. It's one thing about fly tying. If you end up with I've got a chest full of stuff here, literally. Probably gone a bit over the top like I do with most of my hobbies. But if you're tying on a shoestring and you can only afford or have the room for a few materials, you don't necessarily have to use the same materials as what are generally called for in a pattern, so long as it's the same colour and same texture. So there we are. I've got some for the thorax in this particular version. I'm going to use rabbit fur I've dyed it hot orange. As you can see, it shrunk a little bit in the process. I don't know how to bleach furs or bleach feathers, so I've actually bought a white patch, rabbit fur patch, and dyed it hot orange in this case. So we're going to be using, to match the colour of the fly, uni thread in grey in 8/0. And we're going to be using, this is another thing that you can do as well. You can buy tinsels for fly tying, but I actually went to a sewing shop near my old house and bought a pack of 5 holographic tinsel threads called Spectra Jewel by Madeira. There's 200 metres on each one, I think. Sorry, 100 metres. That's the colour there, 525. It says it's 100% polyester, so it's not gonna break anytime soon. You can stretch it out, you can make it thinner, but it's already very thin. And yeah, perfect material for ribbing flies. I use it instead of wire, actually. I'm not a fan of using wire, I find it quite bulky. There we are. My skills are limited, in all fairness, compared to my peers, so I'm sort of what I would call an intermediate fly tyer. Certainly not a pro. So we're going to lay a layer of thread down to the shank. You can trim it at any point as long as it holds. And then you're going to come in and go probably just to where the bend starts, between the barb and the point. So then we're going to get some pheasant. Now I've got an unlimited supply of this stuff because my sister's on a shoot. Just a normal brown pheasant tail. You want about half a dozen fibres or so. Pull them 90 degrees to the stem and then tear off. So they're all practically the same length. One's a bit shorter, but there we are. That's life. We're not looking for perfection here. It's going to end up in a very toothy mouth. You want the tail to be probably about as long as you're expecting the body to be. So not overly long. They would just break off otherwise. That looks a bit too long to me. So we're going to pull that in a bit. There we are. Then we can come round underneath. That helps flare them out. And then lock it in. There's a few in there a little short, that's alright. So I'm quite wasteful with my pheasant tail. Like I say, I've got an unlimited supply of it, but if you haven't got an unlimited supply, you can use that bit I've just chopped off to make the thorax cover. Then we're going to tie in the gold tinsel, if it can be called a tinsel. I suppose it's a thread. Now that roll's a brand new roll that I haven't even started using yet. The roll I'm using is that one. And I've had it since the age of 15. In fact, the label's dropped off it. It's that old and the spools started going yellow. And I still haven't seen the bottom of it yet. So one spill will literally last a lifetime. Right, so we want to tie that in all the way down. Close turns. Doesn't matter if it wraps around the hook so long as it's fairly even. Whoops. I looked at the camera for a second then rather than what I was doing. Alright, come all the way back up. You don't have to be close turns, you can just rush to the tail, or where the tail's tied in. Don't catch the eye of the point of the hook like that. Then we're going to get our rabbit fur and we're going to dub this on. So you sort of pluck it from, I'll see if I can show you. Pluck it from there so you get this fluff. Now we've got a few of the longer, the proper guard hairs in there, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. It actually creates quite a nice texture to the body. You spread it out onto the hook. Onto the thread, I'm sorry, excuse me. Don't have to do anything special. Some people use waxes and faff about. I can't be doing with that. So to get it proper started, you can tie in the first turn and then just tighten it up like that. You want it quite slim towards the end, and then start overlapping to get it to taper into like a carrot shape. It's completely detached from the rest of it. There we are, we'll just redub that on. Sometimes you might need more just to finish it off to get the right length. You need about 3 or 4 mil for the thorax. You can dub it on thick or thin and just build it up. You'll get a feel for it eventually. That'll do. Right, you want about 4 ribs or 4 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that'll be the 5th one that you tie off. There's a few of them gold hairs sticking out now. It's up to you whether you want to leave them there or not. They will get washed back if you're using them if you're using this fly in the river. But I like to actually trim them off. A curved pair of scissors is very good for this. You get the perfect shape then. And coming underneath, but watch your thread. If you cut the thread off, it's not the end of the world. You can rescue it if you do. Let's turn it over and have a look. Like I say, you can do what you want, it's your flight. I like to do that. For the thorax cover, you can use quite a lot of fibres because I like quite a few legs on my flies, and you actually use the pheasant tail. There's both the thorax cover and the legs, so I'll show you how that's done. You sort of tie it in like this with the tips facing forwards. You want them to be about the same length as the tail from the eye, from here. You want them on the top of the hook. They will try and go around the hook. So if they do, just bring them back. You don't want to tie all the way to the eye. Back there is fine. Then come back up. You want the thorax tight. Thorax cover tight with the body. If you haven't tied it in tight, like me. That's perfect. It's rough and ready, this fly. Occasionally I'll do some good enough to go in a glass case, but not always. I do flies that catch fish, so. Going with the orange rabbit fur. You don't want to go too close to the eye with it, because that'll do it. Now there's a few longer ones sticking out there. Now this is your time to get rid of them. If you don't like them, you can leave them in. I don't like leaving them in. Try not to chop the legs or the pheasant tail off, because that will ruin it. Or your thread. If you chop the thread off at this point, you might not be able to rescue it. That just gives it a bit of a hot spot for the trout to home in on, especially if you're fishing in murky water. I found that the Hares Ear is a coloured water fly. If you're fishing a fishery that's constantly coloured up, you need something for the fish to be able to see it and let it stand out from the crowd. Now you want to push the legs back as fairly evenly as possible. It's very difficult to do, actually. They want to spring forward all the time, so just keep working at it and you'll get there eventually. I mean, you can use the thorax cover to sort of split them. If you've got the dexterity to do it, then great. Sorry, I'm faffing a bit here. It's just not behaving. So I'll just put one in to see how that looks. Is it fairly even? Yeah. Few turns just to lock the legs in. We are going to go further back in a minute with the thorax cover tied in. The thorax cover will let smash them down as well a little bit. Bring the thorax cover over. If it's sliding down over the eye, you can lift it up there just to pull it back just a little bit and then lock it in properly. Just get your finger in there and level it with so it's 90 degrees to the bend of the hook as well. Then come in, you can either do them all in one go or do them a little bit by a little bit. I find doing it little bit by little bit is quite useful. You can trim them really close then. You have to make sure they're well tied in at this point because they will just come out. There we go. Then you want to go to the eye and then tie in the cut ends. Create a nice head. And if I may say so myself, that's looking pretty good. Legs are about the right length. You want the legs to go back to the point of the hook and be about the same length as the tail, so it's in the right proportions. That's why I like these hooks. The nymph is just in the right proportions for me. So then we're going to half hitch. Now I've already explained I don't know how to use a whip finish tool. But I know how to use a dubbing needle. There we go. Give it a bit of a tug, not too hard because you'll break the thread, but that locks it in. Get your good scissors. Trim very close. Try not to cut the legs off. I've done that before, tied an entire fly and then chopped the legs off right at the very end. And get your Poundland varnish. I'll do it so you can see. Now you can get, what I like to do with the varnishes is occasionally they get a little bit thick and they don't run properly. What you do is you get some, don't get nail varnish remover, plain nail varnish remover, get acetone and just occasionally just drop a few mil of acetone in there and it'll water it down just a little bit. But there we go, that's the, technically it's known as a gold ribbed hare's ear, but this has got no hair in it. It is made from pheasant and rabbit. But yeah, you use what you've got, I suppose. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching.